Welcome to the Power 2 Pod. My name's Andy,
And I'm Jason.
and this is going to be our Week 8 preview. Looking across the schedule, we got some ranked matchups this week, both in the Big Ten and the SEC. So let's get started with a ranked matchup in the Big Ten, where we have Illinois going to visit Oregon. As we know, Oregon's number one team now, and Illinois is hanging in there. And what are they? 20th is their rank. Kind of an interesting matchup. Oregon's first game is number one, basically. And then, as we know, Illinois is coming off a big win against Michigan, who's not as good as they once were, but definitely should be a pretty decent matchup and could be fun to watch.
Yeah, it definitely could be, but it's kind of hard to say this as a 6-1 Illinois team, but I think Illinois is going to struggle in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised at the end of it that Oregon is up 2 to 3 scores. I know the spread right now is almost 3 scores. I think it's 21.5. But that West Coast travel, or coast to coast travel in general, is just killing these Big Ten teams. And like I said, they got to be beat up after that Michigan game. Even though, like you said, they're not as good, but they're still a physical team. So I feel like that Illinois team is going to be kind of beat up, and then you got to travel all the way to Oregon. I think that's just going to be a hard, they're set up to fail. It's going to be really hard to overcome, especially against the number one team in the nation. So I expect Oregon to win and win comfortably in that one.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting because, we still don't know a whole lot about Illinois. I mean, they beat a ranked Kansas team, which has since fallen off. The score didn't show it, but they were kind of dominated by Penn State. And then they beat a ranked Michigan team who's no longer ranked. So they're really good at beating ranked teams that they knock out of the rankings. Oregon's a different beast, though. But it's going to be interesting to see. Dan Lanning hasn't been ranked number one. This team hasn't been ranked number one. There's a lot of pressure that comes with that. There's a lot that can go wrong, or they can just show up and dominate like they should. Like you said, the spread's 3 touchdowns. So realistically, it shouldn't be a close game. But Illinois plays a style to where it's hard for them to get blown out. They're not the same, ground and pound team. They like to spread you out, short passes, that type of stuff. But they can definitely, shorten a game and keep things close, which I think at this point of the season for Illinois, I mean, you don't want a moral victory, but keeping it close against the number one team could keep you in the rankings. And, if you're looking at their record, I mean, they could go 10-2 even after losing to Oregon.
Yeah, for sure. And, I don't understand kind of the hate that becomes of Oregon, but, like ESPN and, SEC Network and all them, or not SEC Network, but the Big Ten Network and all them, they kind of hate on Oregon. And, they're always talking about how Texas was like the elite team and all these things. But, like, I watched the Oregon Ohio State game, and I thought Oregon played great on both sides of the ball. I don't think that they were just an offensive, like, outscore you team. I don't think they're just a defensive shutdown team. They're not perfect, but as an overall around team, I see why they're number one. But I feel like they get a lot of public hate, and like they're just not a good team. They shouldn't be number one. And granted, they beat Boise and then went to Ohio State. So, I mean, they kind of have 2 key wins already in the season, and that's why they're number one. But I think Oregon is one of at least 3 of the top teams in the nation all around, not just defensively, not just offensively, but all around. I think they're a really good team, and I don't understand kind of how they get the hatred. But
yeah, a new kid on the block kind because they're coming into the Big Ten. They're talking the talk, walking the walk right now. But yeah, I mean, they are one of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten right now. And now it's time. Now there's different expectations because now you're number one. And there's a burden, that with Georgia, there's a burden that comes with being ranked number one. Everybody's gunning for you, and there's a lot of pressure with being ranked number one. Next game here, I'm going to highlight the Hoosiers. Indiana just keeps cranking it out, coming off that blowout win against Nebraska. Washington's making the cross-country travel to Indiana. So we know how that's been working out for teams in the Big Ten. It's been working both ways, whether you're West Coast team going east or an East Coast team going west. Doing the multiple time zones has been a real struggle for most of these teams. Indiana will be playing this game with the backup quarterback. Rourke's out until at least next week with a hand-thumb injury there. Washington's looking to bounce back after that big Michigan win. They kind of fell flat the next week. Could be a really interesting game because, can Indiana sustain what they've been doing with a backup quarterback? He's a backup for a reason. He's not as good as Rourke. He does have, he did get some play there against Nebraska, so it's not like we haven't seen him play. But it's definitely an interesting spot for Indiana. They get Big Noon now. They had College Game Day last week. They get Big Noon this week. Or no, other way around. They had Big Noon last week. They get College Game Day this week, I think it is. One of the two. But, national spotlight's getting put on Indiana. And, the longer this season goes, the more pressure and the bigger these games become. Because as soon as Indiana slips up, if it's Washington, Ohio State, people are going to come out and say, well, it's Indiana. What did you expect? They're kind of in a no-win situation. If they win, it's like, well, who have you played? Which they've had one of the softer schedules, but they beat everybody that's been on their schedule. They don't pick who they play. Yeah, definitely an interesting situation there in Bloomington with the backup quarterback and Washington coming to town. We know Washington's a solid team. I don't know if I put them in the good, they're not good or great tier for sure, but they're definitely solid, and they're not going to be, if they can play clean, that's going to be the key to that game for Washington because they're one of the teams that beat themselves.
Yeah, and even with the softer schedule, Indiana right now is passing the eye test. They put out on the field every week, and they're winning, and they're winning by a lot. They're showing out, and they just haven't been slowed down yet. So even though they have a softer schedule, they're blowing people out left and right. So, and what a great spot to be in when you're undefeated and your starting quarterback goes down. You get a coast-to-coast home game against struggling Washington. So I still like Indiana to win this game. Maybe not by as much as they've been winning as of late, but I still think that Washington just won't have much answers for them, especially on the defensive end of the ball. I still think Indiana puts up a good amount of points.
Yeah, the spread's sitting at 6.5 right now, so I think that there's definitely some of that, like, whoa, it's backup quarterback. A lot of that's coming into play. So it's going to say, hey, this is the first kind of adversity Indiana's had. So, let's see what they do. Moving on, we have a rivalry game, Michigan State, which is in our backyard. We don't have any allegiances, but it is in our backyard with Michigan State traveling over to Ann Arbor. A lot different matchup than what we thought it would be when the year started. Michigan State was projected to be fringe bowl team. They're sitting at 4-3 coming off the Iowa win. And Michigan, who was a top 10 team coming into the season, they're sitting at the same record, 4-3. And if we're being honest, Michigan State's looked better the last couple of weeks. Michigan's really being exposed for their weakness at quarterback, while Michigan State's having the exact opposite. Their Aiden Childs is kind of on the upwards trajectory and really the game starting to slow down with him being so young. You're really seeing him now be able to see the field and actually work within that game plan instead of just slinging it and making turnovers. You can actually see him processing and making the correct play. I want to say Michigan's favored by 3.5 right now. It would not surprise me at all if Michigan State walks into Ann Arbor and gets the win just because they have more offensively than the Wolverines do.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough matchup either way. But really the biggest thing I've seen is just Michigan is just turning the ball over. They're careless with the football. I know Illinois, Tuttle had a fumble running for a first down, and then I'm pretty sure either the right next drive after that or the next drive after that, Donovan Edwards fumble. So it's like, usually Michigan, at least at last year, protected the ball, running it, throwing it, and they're just they're just losing the turnover battle. And I think the most surprising thing is, everybody's kind of blaming the quarterback room and stuff like that. But my question is on Shawn Moore, who was an offensive coordinator for a couple of years under Jim Harbaugh, and now he gets the reign of this program. Knowing that his quarterback room is struggling, he cannot scheme a win out of this football team. And to me, that's like a bigger red flag, like moving forward for this program, is like some of these games you have to win strictly on like coaching and strategy. And he's not changing anything. If you stop the run, they're stagnant. They have no answers on the offensive side of the ball. And like I said, I don't blame that all on the quarterback. You got to get some creativity in your playbook and change it up. Whatever you're doing right now is not working at all. And like I said, I think Michigan State has a above average defense. I don't know where they rank nationally, but the games that I've watched and tuned into, I believe they can stop the run. They always kind of have a above average like linebacker room. So again, I expect if they stop the run, Michigan State will win. If they can't stop the run, then Michigan has a chance to run away with it. But it's definitely a big upside that it's in Ann Arbor. I would say if it's in Lansing, I wouldn't think Michigan have a chance. But since they do have home field advantage, I would give Michigan the slight edge.
Yeah, and then you have Sharon Moore blocking me on Twitter for no reason. I mean, I'll look back through my Twitter. I haven't said nothing, man. I haven't said nothing. I'm not one of the type of people that get blocked. I don't go at anybody. But I got blocked by Sharon Moore. It's ridiculous. We'll have some more on, right? We'll have some more on the Penn State Wisconsin game. We're gonna have Shawn from Hardcore Penn State on later. So with that, let's go through a couple SEC games.
Yeah. At the SEC, there's a couple key matchups, but there's a good handful of teams on byes this week. Georgia's on a bye this week. So one of the key ones this week would be LSU traveling to Texas A&M. Both teams right now, as it sits, has a good chance of making SEC championship game. Especially with the loss to Texas. If Texas A&M can win and win out, they have a chance to, kind of one-up Texas and get in the SEC championship game. And the same with LSU. Their one loss is to a Big Ten USC team, which isn't as great as when they played it. USC was highly ranked at the beginning of the season. But I think this is going to be a really good game. You're going to see what kind of coaching you can expect for that Texas A&M with Elko coming in. Since they've lost, they lost to Notre Dame to start the year. They've been on a hot streak, and they kind of figured some things out on both sides of the ball. But I honestly, it's hard to bet against Texas A&M in Texas A&M because, like I said, that 12th man is the real deal over there. They can get loud and crazy, but I think LSU just has a naturally better offense. And as long as Nussmeier has a good game, I see LSU kind of running away with this one.
Yeah, I mean, you're finally seeing Texas A&M. You're seeing Mike Elko's fingerprints on the team finally. I mean, both teams are coming in on 6-game win streaks. So both teams are hot. It's essentially a quarterfinal game for the SEC. I mean, loser's going to be out of the SEC race. Winner still has a chance with Texas, Georgia. I mean, if you look at it, Alabama's kind of out of it. 2 losses in the conference already. You'd have to think there's going to be at least 2 teams that only have 1 loss. But, I mean, SEC's tough, so it could go either way. But, yeah, I see Texas A&M as favored, but I kind of like LSU in this matchup just because I feel like they've shown more offensively than Texas A&M. They're a little bit more explosive. But yeah, I think I would favor LSU in this matchup.
Yeah. The only really thing that worries me the most about picking LSU in this game is Brian Kelly. He usually kind of shrivels up in big games and can't get it done. But hopefully, I guess he can get past that. Traveling to Texas A&M this week. So, but moving on, another key matchup would be Missouri traveling to Alabama. Tuscaloosa is always a hard place to play. Missouri has definitely struggled as of late. They took a loss, and Brady Cook just hasn't looked the same. He's not playing with the same efficiency, and their run game is nowhere near what it was as of last year. But then again, I really don't know what to think about this Alabama team. I sat there and watched them beat the brakes off of Georgia for the first half and then completely almost implode and then won on an interception. And then they absolutely just shit the bed against Vanderbilt and, shouldn't even been a competitive game, lost to Vanderbilt, and then lost to Tennessee, which is a very up and down team as well. So you look at this Alabama team and you really don't know what they are. You want to think that they're Alabama, but it's not the same. It's not the Saban era anymore. But I mean, right now, Alabama was a minus 16.5 favorite.
Yeah. Missouri's, I feel like here comes the fall of Missouri. They just lost their starting running back. But I mean, as far as what Alabama's undisciplined and immature basically this season. Like they are racking up penalties, racking up turnovers, and they've just shown that to be undisciplined. A lot of missed assignments on the defensive end, and like I said, a lot of penalties. So it's just a team that needs to find its discipline, and it should be fine. Glad you could join us. Just want to talk.
Yeah.
I'm a Penn State fan. My brother Jason, he's Georgia fan, so we won't take it too hard on him and his successes. But yeah, we were just talking about some of the games we went to, and before that we were talking about if the Penn State Wisconsin game was a trap game or not. I've been seeing that floating around on Twitter.
A weird term, isn't it? Trap game.
Yeah, I'm more worried about the James Franklin off a bye week than a trap game.
Well, I was just trying to tell my dad that same thing. Like, if we lost to USC, I would fully be expecting us to lose Saturday.
Yeah,
I don't think we will, but if we lost, because that's kind of a flaw of James Franklin.
Yeah, it's kind of the James Franklin MO. We're gonna lose the game we shouldn't, especially if it's on the road and off a bye week.
Yeah, and especially if you lose the game before. So thankfully they ended up pulling it out at USC. I mean, one thing about him though that I will give him, he usually doesn't get caught looking ahead. So
right. That's
where the 1-0 mentality definitely comes in.
Yeah, for sure. Like, it's
so I will give him that.
Yeah. I mean, especially with Ohio State coming up, like I can see the people that are saying it's a trap game, but I think he's been doing it too long to look ahead.
Yep, I agree.
But yeah, I mean, we were just talking about the spread too. It's already dropped down to 6.5 from 10.5.
I know.
I'm like,
that kind of scares me a little bit.
Right? What does Vegas know that we don't?
I know. Yeah, whenever it drops whenever it's dropping like a rack like that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's. I wish it wasn't at night.
Right. Have you ever been to?
Tough place to go.
We were also looking through the games and how this isn't the same Wisconsin it was during that USC and Alabama game. It seems like with their new quarterback, they've kind of they found a new kind of drive and have looked a lot better the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. When I first saw him against Alabama, I was like, God, this guy. I don't know very much with him, but looks like an underrated coach. I don't think he gets. I think he's bizarrely underrated in my opinion. You saw what he did at Cincinnati. They're the only Group 4 team ever to make the playoff. The guy just wins, and that's something I really like about him. Like if Franklin ever left, he'd be on my short list of replacements at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think
he knows the area really well too.
Oh, I think the thing with Wisconsin fans is I think they expected like the they didn't expect that little bit of drop off when they went to him, because they kind of had that drop off with switching schemes and all that. But he just needs that time to get his kind of players in there, I feel like.
Yeah, I think so too. Because it was a big culture shift, because really since the early '90s when they had Barry Alvarez, there's not much of a difference between how they played with him and how they played with Paul Chris. Outside of the one Russell Wilson season, they're basically the same team. And then you bring in a guy that's completely different stuff. So it's a bit of a culture shock. I kind of disagreed with people that thought, well, that can't work at Wisconsin, because it's kind of like, why? Why can't it
Yeah.
work there? College football changed. Why can't it just evolve at Wisconsin? Michigan runs different stuff than they used to in the '90s. Ohio State runs way different stuff than they used to under Jim Tressel. Why can't it be that way with Wisconsin? That
Yeah.
didn't really make any sense to me. Like, why people thought you have to play a style from the 1970s in the year 2024, and it's the only way it could work.
Right. The only teams that
Yeah,
have to
like you
play
said,
the same way was Army and Navy. They're the only teams that have
Right.
to play the same way.
Obviously. Yeah. Yeah.
What are you looking for from Penn State this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing with Penn State is get off to a faster start. I keep saying on our podcast that it's gonna cost us at some point just getting off slow starts like that. And I realized that USC did drive down the field and ended up kicking a field goal, but still at the end of the first half, you got 20-6. And if you're playing that way against, never mind Ohio State, but a team like Wisconsin, a solid team, a somewhat solid team like Minnesota. Yeah, you could be in trouble, especially if you turn the ball, especially if you're turning the ball over. So I think getting off to a fast start, taking the crowd out of the game, that's going to be something that I'm really looking for them to do to start.
Yeah, kind of the polar opposite of what they did at USC.
Yeah, just keep playing that way from the third, like the way you play from the third quarter. Just start in the first quarter. That would be all of our problems would be solved. I think we're the best third quarter team in the country.
Right. I mean, I think
Play
James.
differential.
Right. James just needs to tell Tom Allen that it's the third quarter when we start the game.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, Tom Allen, it feels like we do in-game tweeting, which is fun with all the replies we get, and the amount of fire Tom Allen tweets I get in the first half of every game, it's nuts. And then in the second half, everybody loves him.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing I noticed with the USC game is it doesn't seem like Nick Singleton's as explosive. Do you know anything that's going on there? Is he battling something, or is he just kind of they just game playing Tyler Warren last week?
I think it's probably both. I think it's obvious he's not quite as explosive as he was earlier in the year. I think the bye week came at a great time for him. But then, because I think going into that game, everybody was under the impression we're just going to run right at USC. And, I mean, we did run the ball. I don't think we ran it as effectively as we wanted to. But it really wasn't the game plan. Quinn playing clearly just feed Tyler Warren the ball. And I think a lot of that has to do with Singleton being a little slower. And it's funny, like the way we talk about him, because he did score the game time touchdown. But
Yeah.
we're used to a more explosive Nick Singleton. And I think there's a good chance you'll start seeing more of that this week.
Yeah, the offense just looks as good as it looked in the second half with Tyler Warren and all that. It just looks different if Singleton's doing it too.
No question. And I think Katron's better when Singleton is in. They feed off each other, and they complement each other perfectly. Another thing we talk about a lot on our pod as well. It's very rare that you see two running backs come in the same class and just complement each other so well and be so unselfish. Neither transfers out, and it almost seems like they prefer the splitting of carries because they're saving themselves, wear and tear for the NFL.
Yeah,
and they just complement each other so well, their abilities.
Yeah, it's like the thunder and lightning, with Reggie Bush and Lindo White kind of thing. And them staying together, I mean, that's got to speak somewhat to, James Franklin's culture, because you don't see a lot of top end guys really transferring out. If you're looking at kind of best player now on the defense, it's probably Abdul Carter. I know I've liked seeing him the last few games. They're moving him around. Like, he's not just at defensive end. He's going to the linebacker. He's coming on the inside. Do you think that was always kind of like the plan with him was, start him off at defensive end, make sure he's comfortable, and then make him kind of a menace to defenses?
I think so. I think it's kind of Franklin. He didn't get that last year with Michael Parsons. So I think this is probably a version of what we would have seen with him. Now, I think Michael Parsons is a freak of nature, and while I think Abdul Carter is very good, just imagine Mike doing all this stuff. But yeah, moving him to linebacker, playing him inside, and of course he's playing the edge. I think this is a good way to use him. Of course, the big debate now is should you just keep him at linebacker, considering the linebacker depth. But and I understand why they put him at edge because he has more of an impact on just rushing the passage because he is such a menace, especially on the opposite side of the night in the sun.
Yeah, they definitely make one heck of a 1-2 punch. Even though they're not racking up the sacks, they're still affecting the game.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I do want to see them get home more.
Yeah. I mean, with those two, you feel like the strip sacks are just sitting there waiting for them. Kind of like we seen last year.
I thought we would have pressured Miller Moss better because second half we did, but I want to see that more.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like some of it's also game plan. I've seen Landon Tangwell's clips that he put out today, kind of on Twitter, and how the scheme against Penn State is basically get the ball out quick so the defense line can't affect the game.
Right. Yeah, definitely, because USC's offensive line was a little banged up going in. Not banged up, but it's very young. And it was a weakness of theirs. I mean, they have all those playmakers at receiver, and Woody Marks is a heck of a running back himself. It's Miller Moss getting the ball out of his hands quick, and I think Lincoln Riley had a good game plan. But it's just the USC mess. They're finding ways to lose, and that's not where you want to be at the program. I've followed Penn State teams like that before, and it is not fun.
No, those are the worst years to be a Penn State fan. Do you see with this Wisconsin matchup where could it go wrong for Penn State? Like, what should we be looking for? Like, this is how Wisconsin beats Penn State.
Yeah, I think they beat Penn State if I'm a little I just hope we're able to run the ball. I know the USC thing the past 2 weeks. We had been going over 200 yards every week. Then UCLA, USC didn't happen. I don't think it's any coincidence that Nick Singleton wasn't healthy for either of those. Limited last week, and then just straight out just not playing against UCLA. So I think if they limit the run and find some way to limit the run and limit Tyler Warren, and try to make the receivers beat them. Even though I think the receivers have been better this year, they kind of thrived off the fact that we've been able to run the ball so well, and defenses have to worry about Tyler Warren. So I think that's a way that we could be in some trouble. And of course, the thing that I worry about every week is the linebackers. Rojas has been pretty good. DeLuca's all right, and I think Kobe King very, very underrated. I don't think he gets talked about enough. But then when Tyler Elton comes in, man, we're all just literally shaking in our boots because they're just gonna run right at Tyler Elton. So hopefully we play a lot of Kobe King, and we're able to handle them on the ground.
Yeah, I've taught my wife if 43's out there, it's a bad thing.
It really isn't. God love the kid. It's tough to watch sometimes. I mean, he plays very hard. He's made plays over the years, but it's just brutal.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, Kobe, and he's been a star there, kind of like the unsung hero of that defense. And then Tony Rojas being so young, I missed a couple tackles last few games, more so than he usually does. But with those two, I feel like those two are pretty good. But behind that, I mean, you're really lacking.
Yeah, like with Rojas, I see a little bit of Brandon Smith in him, in that sometimes he's always looking for the huge tackle. Mm-hmm. And it's like, dude, just wrap up. You're so athletic. You're so fast. Just take him down. You don't need to drill him in the next week.
Yeah, he's always looking for like the highlight.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, you don't need to do that. And these guys are so good, you're not gonna make all those tackles. So I do hope he learns that, and that's something you could learn. Brandon Smith sadly never learned it, but I total faith that Tony Rojas will. And then What was your last question? I apologize.
Oh, I think he answered it. I was just, how does Wisconsin win this game?
Oh, yeah.
And like you said,
Yes.
if they're able to limit the run game and take Warren out, that's probably a good recipe for them to put it on Aller and the wide receivers.
Yep. And I gotta say too, Drew grew up. One of the things we were worried about on our podcast was, can he take that next step? Because I actually think he played a little worse last year than people think, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. I know everybody blamed the receivers for everything, but you look here in Headland at times, and it scared me. And you just haven't seen that at all this year. Even when we were in trouble at USC, you never saw him look panicky at all.
Yeah, like he played super safe, super conservative last year. Like wouldn't try to fit a ball anywhere. And I think there's a lot more confidence this year. And with that, he's going to have a couple more interceptions, but I'll take the couple turnovers if we're going to make the big play.
Me too. I mean, think of the best quarterbacks. I mean, Patrick Mahomes had 2 interceptions this week, and they won the game. Sometimes you have to put the ball in there, and even when it doesn't look like they're open, like, dude, you have such a huge arm. You could fit it in and let your guy try to make a play. And that finally clicked for him this year.
Sorry about that, Shawn. I'm starting a new session. There we go. Can you hear us?
We can't hear him. He's talking, but I can't hear him.
Let's see. Shawn's recording failed. The recording is stopped, but everything up until now has been saved. Tell them to stop and restart the studio recording. Hang on. See if I can hit him up on Twitter.
Yeah, because he keeps talking, but I can't hear him.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the big thing with Aller, like we were saying, is a lot more confidence. I heard you're an Aller hater, Jason.
Andy thinks I am, but I'm not.
No, that's okay.
But before you got on, I was telling him basically how I feel Wisconsin could beat them. And, if, like I said, they get to, if Penn State gets off to a slow start again, like they were at USC, and it's up to Drew Aller, he has not yet proved to me, as an outsider anyways, that he can go out and win that game, especially in another hostile environment. But I also think, like, looking at Wisconsin, like a hot team right now, but their last 3 games have been against subpar talent. So I feel like, there's a little bit of a misconception with this Wisconsin team. So I 100% believe Penn State will win this game. But if, like I said, Drew Aller has a bad game, I don't know if their run game can win them the game.
Yeah, very possible. Drew, like, I know he had the interceptions last week, I do, but it's the first game that I could think of that he actually won the game for them. We got to ask the question before the USC game. Is Drew Aller going to have to win the game for Penn State? I said no. I thought we would just be able to run the ball. I was wrong. Drew had to win the game for us. And I hope we're not in that situation again. But I don't think we will be. Personally, I think Penn State does win this. And I think he'll be fine. But I think we're going to kind of go back to our roots a little bit this week, and with the run game.
Yeah, because you look at Wisconsin, their last 3 games, they've, I think, let in like a combined 16 points. Like, it's been like a 6-point game, 3.7.
Yeah.
Their defense has been dominant, but then you look back to their 2 losses, against Alabama, who their second
USC.
loss to was, but they were blowouts. Like, they let in like 38, 42, or 52 points. Like, they let in a lot of points, and that is, like, that's the same defense that they have now. So I think that's where the misconception is, where is that defense really at against talent like you said, Penn State, number 3 team coming in, is that defense actually legit? And I don't think it is. So that's why I think I'd give the edge to Penn State this week.
Yeah, I think a weakness with Wisconsin really is their athleticism. I think they'd be really good in the Big Ten West, that old Big Ten West division, but it ain't like that anymore. So you got to be able to run with the big boys a little bit. Like I said, I think in the long run they're going to be fine. And if Van Dyke was playing, I'd be more afraid for sure. But I just think we're going to have a little too much firepower for them, and eventually talent will win the day.
I could definitely see like those two games, the Alabama and the USC game. They were close games for a while, and then got away from Wisconsin. You could see the same thing happen with Penn State if they don't have the James Franklin bye week special. But yeah, I mean, do you want to give a prediction on here, or do you want to save that for yours?
Yeah, I'll give it here. I do think Penn State wins it. I'm gonna go, and I think we look a little better than the better think. Penn State hasn't covered a spread in a few weeks, which is unusual for James Franklin. I'm gonna go Penn State 31, Wisconsin 20.
All right, Jay, do you want to give one?
Pretty entertaining game.
Yeah. I will Penn State 27 and Wisconsin 13. Like I said, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of points scored. Like I said, I think both teams are going to kind of try to do the run attack, and I think it's going to kind of shorten that game a bit. Like I said, I do feel comfortable with Penn State winning this game against Wisconsin.
I'm gonna have to pick Wisconsin just so we're not all on the same page. No, but I think I think Penn State wins this game too. I mean, what I'd like to see and what actually happens is a different thing, but I'll give you what I'd want to see. I want to see Penn State like 34, Wisconsin 17. Something just it shows a distance between the two teams.
Yeah, I think it'd be big to make a statement against a solid team on the road too, going into on.
But it'll get downplayed just like the USC win did.
Well, that's true, because ultimately it all comes back to Ohio State, doesn't it?
All right, Shawn, thanks for joining us.
No problem.
Check out Shawn's podcast, Hardcore Penn State Football, on State Media. And thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, let's move on to now our odds on campus segment here. I'll get us started. First bet I feel confident in is USC minus 13.5 against Rutgers. We know the cross-country travel is a thing. Rutgers is a shell of itself and really injured, and USC kind of has a statement to make. Like, are you guys going to throw in the towel this year, or are you guys going to be the USC you say you are? So my first one's going to be USC minus 13.5.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think Rutgers was kind of a fraud early on. Got a lot of hype going, 5 or 6-0, and then absolutely thrown a dud against Wisconsin. And like you said, I think just USC has a lot more to lose than the Rutgers at this point. Moving to the SEC, you got Texas visiting Vanderbilt. Right now the spread is minus 18.5. I expect that to go back down another point or two. But I will take it at minus 18.5. I think Vanderbilt's playing a lot better team, or, a lot better football than what they were last year or 2 years ago. This is a team that was scratching to get 1-2 wins, and they're sitting at 5-2 right now. So I think they are a little bit better team than as of late, but I think the win against Alabama is a huge misconception. Texas is kind of licking their wounds against dropping a game against Georgia, so I think they're going to come out, make a statement. They're still an elite program and can compete against the best. So I'm going to take Texas minus 18.5.
My next one, I'm going to go to the rivalry game. I'm going to go to the Michigan State-Michigan game. Currently, I can get Michigan State plus 3.5, and I will take Michigan State 3.5 just because I think they're better right now.
Yeah, for sure. My next one is going to be Oklahoma Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss is going to be, now that they got 2 losses and, a bad loss against Kentucky, they're really going to be scratching to make the playoffs late in this season. So they host Oklahoma, who has just been struggling, maybe regretting the move to the SEC at this point. These are the games that kind of make great teams, elite teams, is getting through the thick of the SEC. SEC game after SEC game. Now you're on the road. It's tough. But I think Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss They kind of got to make a statement now. They gotta pass the eye test that that loss to Kentucky was kind of a fluke, and they lost to LSU. Granted, it was in overtime, so that's not as bad. But this Oklahoma team is a struggling team, so I got Ole Miss -20. The big spread this week.
Yeah, you're laying a lot of points. On the flip side of that, I will keep taking points. I'm going to take Northwestern +14 against Iowa. Iowa coming off the loss against Michigan State. Iowa's now 4-3. It'll also kill my over-under on the Iowa that I picked the over for on the wins. But I'm going to take Northwestern. I'm not going to take the money line to win, but I'll take Northwestern +14.
+14?
+14. Give me Northwestern +14 against Iowa.
I mean, Iowa, I just don't understand that football team at all.
No, that team.
They'll win by they'll have a spread of -1, win by like 24 points, and then just absolutely have a dud and score 6 points to them.
I was talking to an Iowa fan on Twitter. He's like, well, that didn't happen. I'm like, I don't know what to do with this team. I was like, Iowa confuses me the most out of any team in the Big Ten. When I think they're going to win, they lose. When I think they're going to lose, they win. I don't get Iowa. I don't want to get Iowa at this point.
So for let's see, for the next one, I am going to go to Auburn and Kentucky. And I'm sure I'm going to be the only one betting on this game. But I am actually going to bet the over 43.5 on the total for this game. Both teams have showed some upside on the offensive side of the ball, and they both have struggled mightily at the same time. And it's in Kentucky. So like I said, that's becoming a tough place to play. And I don't know why. I mean, Kentucky, they have their fan base, but it's not an elite environment. But people don't play their best games there. But I think these two teams both have something to prove, trying to get a good season out of what they've started with. So I'm going to go with the over 43.
All right. Now let's move on to our locks of the week. I'm going off the board. I'm not letting you bully me into picking Penn State as a lock of the week.
Because you're not a true fan.
I am. I will spite bet against them just so if they do lose, I win money. But I'm not. I'm not
and then they'll win by 50.
I'm going off the board. Give me BYU +2.5 against UCF. BYU.
Can't do that.
I can do what I want.
Why is fun? You're going to go BYU?
You got to show some love to the other people every once in a while. BYU's 11th. UCF is 3-4. Why are you giving BYU points? Give me BYU +2.5. Lock it.
We'll see. But to me, that doesn't even count. Anyways, going to the SEC, my lock of the week is LSU. I'm going to go money line. You can take +2.5, but I am taking money line LSU. Like I said, I think this is going to be a really close matchup. The +2, I see that moving to +1 and almost even money. But I think LSU goes and wins. I think that Brian Kelly finally kind of gets over the hump of big games. I think he actually outcoaches Coach Elko. And I think LSU comes along with that win. And like I said, they're going to be in a really good position to be able to make a chance for the SEC championship game. So I like LSU on the road.
All right, there you have it. That'll do it for us on our Week 8 preview here. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and review, and have a good one.
See ya.